Testing. All right. Thanks for coming out. Can everybody hear me? Great. Okay, good. Thanks. I'll start my story in a minute, but what I like to do at these meetings is do a round of ohms, chanting Om. But I'd like to do them not in sequence. So, and you may have done this before, but it's really cool. I'll start it, and we'll each do 3. Start them and stop them anytime you want to. Don't all do it together. In other words, stage it, and it all kind of becomes this harmony after a while, but it really changes the vibes in the room. So I'll start it. I'll do 3, you do 3. Don't follow me, just dive in wherever you like and let it go as long as you like. Okay? So, sweet, nice, huh? Very nice. I'm going to read a poem because I've always been an artist and a poet my whole life, and my near-death experience reflects that of an artist and a poet that had a near-death experience. I don't know what other people have. Like I'm not sure if an accountant has a near-death experience that all the numbers add up or something. But it probably goes that way. So I'll read this poem for you. I'll put on my little glasses for the lights and everything. I try to write inspirational poetry, mostly about self-initiation, because that's the next step in humanity. And I'll be talking about that a little bit tonight, and especially tomorrow. And this one's called Your Fire Dance, Your Way. And it goes this way. Time, life, and density change. The skins of your past lives fall away, as all plots and karmas are undone and rerun on the network of souls. Think of the seemingly endless searching one does in body and spirit, to climb Jacob's ladder, even reaching high enough to touch the face of God. And still, the fire of life calls you back again and again. And it will always have its way. Deep inside your soul's memory, the old self-image slowly burns away, until all that remains of you in the white ash and glowing darkness is a new image of yourself being born on moonbeams in the beautiful night of your life. Sparks fly from the phoenix fire like shooting stars to wish on. All life has a wish to be born again into the fire dance of life. You are blessed to be invited into the fire dance. This life is your dance. This life is your way. Trust your life. Let go and grow in wondrous ways. Yes. Good. So these days I kind of focus on my afterlife because I am living in the afterlife. And we all are, really. I really believe in reincarnation now, everything I've learned with my visitations with the light. And so we're always living in the afterlife, if you think about it that way. And in this incarnation, I'm already in this afterlife from the previous life I lived. I've already lived now twice as long as I would have. So that's a blessing in many ways. But so I really focus on the afterlife. It's really important about what's happening since my near-death experience. And as near-death, and I predicted near-death to become huge in about this time. And it is. You're seeing it on TV almost every day now, and everybody's having one. And it's part of our evolution, And it is part of the evolution to lose the fear of death. Because once you lose the fear of death and really get it, it's hard to be manipulated. Even by governments, soldiers, generals, politicians. You lose that fear, and you start acting in a different way. And it's part of the near-death experience is a part of our evolution and a part of what the light is talking to me about is self-initiation. The We've had teachers for eons, and there's thousands more teachers alive today than ever been alive, gurus, masters, and right at a time when we need them. Because if you think there's a lot of problems in the world, we have a lot of answers also. You ever think about that? There's more therapists, more doctors, more everything that's ever been on the planet before, and more ways to find your way to the light than's ever existed before. I mean, the taboos are falling away for the most part in most of the world, and we're free, but we haven't realized we're free yet. We still think we're being controlled, that George Bush or anybody like that can control us. We're about to wake up, though, and when the sleeping giant wakes up, a great correction starts taking place, and we're in the middle of it right now. That's called self-initiation. Self-initiation is really something that no one else but you can do. The Dalai Lama would love to do it for you, saints would love to do it for you, but they can't. They got us this far. The next step you have to take into self-initiation, and that's the last initiation as you live into these incarnations on planet Earth. So, but I'm going to begin with a little bit about my story, just a little bit. I'm someone that was really clueless before I'm a product of Catholic boarding schools, and they pretty much get religion out of you pretty quick. You get over that pretty quick. And they're constantly being told you're going to go to hell for eternity for everything from not polishing your shoes to bedwetting, and of course that created a lot of bedwetting. And so I started thinking about that early on in my life, about what is eternity, and what. So it kind of helped me become a deep thinker. And I was reminded of that in my near-death experience, which I'll be talking about. But I'm someone that didn't believe in God. I was not an atheist. I think atheists they don't offer anything. They're bullies, basically. But and at least an atheist shows some interest in the subject. I showed no interest whatsoever. It was not even a point of contention with me. And so when I got the diagnosis, I had no real spiritual background at all, except many years ago all the Catholic stuff. I was an altar boy, where I learned all my sacrileges. We learned who made the host, and we learned all the stuff behind the curtains. But so I didn't have any real spiritual background. I was not interested in the subject, and there was a little library in the hospital. And I'm someone who never heard of hospice, but I ended up in one. Thought I was coming in there just pretty clueless, And in the hospice, there was a little library. Actually, it was a bookshelf. That was it. And there were a few books on world religions, those big, thick things and things like that. I was kind of going through them, kind of maybe boning up on maybe what's next. But none of it resonated with me. None of it. Especially that silly stuff, reincarnation and all that stuff. This was so silly. So it didn't help me. And I did have a living will. And I requested at first to be let my body alone for 3 days, but everybody got a little touchy about that. And so we settled, and the thing was, I wanted to die by that time because I had no faith in the world, and so I wanted to be sure I was really dead. And another thing was, had I ended up in a coma, my mother would have gotten me, and I'd still be on tubes somewhere. She would have never let go. One of those things, So I wanted them to make sure I was really dead before, so I couldn't be revived at all. And so that was a phase in which you're winding down in life with no reserves and also no foundation of any kind. I really thought that death was really the end of everything, like a lot of people have over the centuries. And so for me, and I'll put this bookmark there. I was monitored for an hour and a half without vital signs. Now, in near-death research, that's not even close to a record. George Rodnaya was dead for 3 days in a morgue before he came back. And there's drowning victims been underwater, an hour and come back. But so that's no record. It may sound like it unless you know what the research is. And so I'll begin with my afterlife. It started when I woke up one morning and I had this feeling that today was the day. And it's the same feeling soldiers get before battle, or a mother gets about a child or something. There's a quality of knowing. It's a clarity, actually. I call it the absolute clarity right before you die. Everything gets real clear right before you die. Oh, I got it. you know, and it was it actually was a pretty good feeling. It was a very calm feeling, and so I remember going back to sleep. The next thing, and this again, my near-death experience was before the internet, which changed everything. Mine was '82, before the internet. I predicted that since the internet, and everybody would be well studied, and by the time you would have a near-death experience, that you would see a certain genre appear in the near-death experience, and that's what's happened. So and also I spread it more than ever before. I'm someone that I never put my story on the internet. I was outed. I was asked by a couple of people, researchers, who the first near-deather I ever met was 85 or so, when I met PMH Atwater, and she was the first near-deather I ever met. There weren't any in Fayetteville that I knew. Nobody was talking anyway. And I've been asked to write my story down, which I called my children's story. If any of you have read it, I call that the children's story, and that's the only one I ever wrote down. But the life that I've matured in the experience ever since then. And it was a college professor in New York that got a copy from somebody, or one of the people that I'd given copies to, just to read and tell me if I was crazy or not. That was what I was looking for. And he published it, and he had it in a book, and he put it on the internet. I never did. I was outed, and I didn't speak to him for a couple of years. I was so angry about the whole thing. Unlike what's become, America's become this country where there's this disease called fame. I call it the famous disease, and I never caught that disease. I never caught it. I know many that have. So I was never interested in being famous, because my experience was for me, and it always has been. And people say, why haven't you put out a book? Well, the experience was for me, and I never felt I actually knew enough. And this has been 30-some years now, and I'm still in school. And but the thing is, because of the internet, and I've allowed my story to be used for free by everybody. Anybody who wanted to put me in a book could do it. So that got it all over the planet, big time. And I only put up my own website in 2005, because between 95 and 2005, I stopped touring and talking. I didn't do anything with the near-death experience at all. Just left it. I had been an inventor and a researcher, and that's when I focused on those kind of companies and doing that kind of work. And so I didn't do anything with the subject for 10 years, but it had its own legs. It grew without me. It took off without me. The train left town without me. But you know what happens when you tell a story around, that old saying, you tell 10 people's story and it changes. I was by that time getting emails, and I wasn't even recognizing who they were talking about. So my first website was called The Real Mellen, just to keep the story straight. And that's all it was. And it's evolved from then. I'm very happy that my story's been very inspirational to people. That was my highest hope. But I didn't have to publish a book to do it or anything like that. And so I just want to put that bookmark there. For me, that morning, I went back to sleep, and the next thing I know, I was standing outside my body, and there was darkness around me, and I couldn't, this is a kind of a symbol, I couldn't get back, I was trying to get back to my body, but I couldn't. I couldn't get there or touch it. And it was a very, very strange feeling, and very vivid. It's as vivid as we are here, as right here in this room tonight. And it wasn't a dream. It was much more than a dream. And I'd been preparing for this for, I was given 6 to 8 months to live, and I followed doctor's orders. And good patient. So I see my body, and I see these waves of light coming off it, which now I know is biophotons. They leave your body when you die. And I was trying to get back to it and couldn't. And it was a very, very weird feeling. And then I found the darkness closed in on me. And I usually put up a picture of a black hole, because I felt like I fell into a black hole. It was all darkness. I was totally alone. And I really thought, and the funny thing is, you're thinking, and you seem to be present, but all that doesn't register. It's all in the moment. And I really thought, is this how it ends? You fall in some dark hole, and this is how it ends. And that was pretty scary. And I had no spiritual background to fall back on, I thought. And then what people now call a life review began for me. And the life review, which is a very important part of the process, because I've had many visitations back with the light, and researchers were surprised to find out when they first started, Ken Rain and all the others that were researching me, were surprised to find out that I go back to the light all the time, daily. And they never knew a near-deather that was doing that. And I didn't know, I had no idea if it was normal or not. So they started looking into that. And they said, what do you do when you go back to the light? And I said, well, I ask questions, I get answers, and I try to keep it very practical, like not philosophy, something I can invent or bring back. So I became an inventor. But I want to explain the near-death, the life review that people talk about from my perspective. And the life review began for me, and it's a little different for each person because we are unique individuals and unique set of frequencies. But for me, it kind of began with the moment of my death and ticked all the way backwards, all the way back into the womb. And there were, I was seeing images of my life, and I was seeing things, a lot of things you've forgotten that you'll remember, as you see your whole life. But you don't have to look at everything. There were things that I call the dark doors that I did. You're not forced to look at anything. There were some dark places I didn't look, but I saw these kind of, I call them dark doors. I didn't look at them, but other things were flying around, memories of my life and childhood, and even memories in childhood that later, talking to my mother, she said, you couldn't remember that, you were too young, or you weren't even born. And you remember stuff that was going on in the family. And so for me, it ticked all the way back, and for me, it was very sad. Some people have bad karma. I had sad karma, really sad karma, and it was a sad life review. And the biggest, saddest thing of all is I was born into a family that nobody had any love skills. We didn't have the skills, so we didn't know how to show love to each other. A military family. I was born at Fort Bragg, and it was just kind of a life in which there are many loving families in the military, but our family, nobody in the family had those skills. They're all involved in their own stuff. And so we never learned how to love each other. And so I never developed the love receptors. So I went through my life till I died thinking that love was a mental illness. It had all the symptoms of a mental illness. When you fall in love, you do crazy things and you do things. I thought it was a mental illness. And that's how I looked at it. And so the sad thing in my life review was I got to see how many people had tried to love me. And I never got it. I didn't have the receptors. And that really made me sad because I thought there was no love. And there was always love. You just don't see it. You know, it's like this is heaven on earth. You just have to see it. You know, the heaven on earth is not to be expected. It's already here. Mankind just has to see it. And so that was really sad for me. Very, very sad. And as it went back, it got sadder. It just kept getting sadder and sadder. Because my parents were pretty dysfunctional. They fought all the time. My mother was pregnant with me. And as a fetus, I can tell you're fully conscious. And the fights and the hitting and the beating and all that I was in the middle of it all. And a fetus is connected to the mother's hormones, nervous system, and everything. So I was feeling everything deeply. So by the time I was born, I'd already had my worldview set. My worldview was set. And that worldview was, this is not a fun place. It's a dangerous place. And because my dad was beating my mother all the time, I had this attitude that males are dangerous things. So I never bonded with males. I always had female friends. I never trusted males. I never had a male best friend. I didn't trust them. And I didn't even know I didn't trust them. I just, stayed away from them. And so I was seeing these kind of things. I was going, wow, I missed like my whole life. I missed my whole life. And it was pretty sad. But to get back to the point, the life review has a twofold purpose. One of which is you're going to get a review of your life, as much of it as you want to look at. Or, depending on your dogma, your hard-headedness, or your culture, you may have a different kind of a life review, or maybe just go straight to the light and see Jesus or something, It just depends. But I was someone that was unprogrammed, so to speak. And so as my life review ticked away, and I was seeing, and I saw a lot of things that you do not remember, that you're all heroes. You're all heroes. I mean, if you really think about it, just getting up every morning, going to work, paying your bills and taxes is a heroic thing. Let me tell you, it's heroic. Raising kids, a mortgage, this is heroic stuff. You know, it makes the dog's life seem pretty easy. And you see, so you get to see these episodes in your life where you just took them for granted. We take these heroic actions for granted. Every time you may have helped somebody or didn't help somebody, like you could have. And the life review is not to make you feel guilt or anything, because there's no judgment, but there is the hardest judgment. That is self-judgment, and that's the hardest judgment you'll ever face. So the first part of the life review is really about this life review, and you're seeing things from other perspectives, because every word you ever say about anybody sticks to them. The Buddhists call it akka threads, silver threads, all kinds of words for it in all cultures. But and people will remember these things because you've connected to them, and you may not have been in the room with them when you're talking about it, and they'll have a life review, and they may hear this or see it, and they'll know exactly who it came from. The good news is if you have not been able to get to somebody and get into forgiveness with them, or they won't listen to you, do it anyway, out loud, in privacy, because it will be part of their life review. So do it anyway. It doesn't go away. It sticks. And especially if you have a picture and a name, that kind of thing. You know. And usually if you have karma, you know. Anyway. But so the self-judgment's pretty interesting. You go through some pretty deep stuff. And you judge yourself on things that nobody else would judge you about. And also, you never give yourself credit for heroic things you may have done. Being raised in North Carolina, you don't see this in California, but a lot of snakes and turtles on the roads. You know, you just don't see that out there. And all you see is skunks everywhere. But I used to, and I saw this in my life review. I used to, if I saw a snake or a turtle in the road, I had to stop and save them. I had to. And I was shown one incident of that. I think I was coming up to Raleigh on one of those country roads from Creekwave Arena. It was traffic. There was heavy traffic, people getting off work, I guess. And I saw this turtle stuck on the white line. And traffic's flying back and forth. And I didn't even think. I pulled over, and I got myself into the center lane. You know, cars whizzing by. I picked up the turtle. And now I realize I'm just like the turtle. Uh-oh. Whizzing by, right and left. People not even caring, and I made my way back to the side of it, risking my life for a turtle, and put it into the woods. And I got to see, wow, that was, I didn't even think that was heroic. I just did it. So think about all those things you do for your children and others and animals, and these little things that are really things you should pat yourself on the back for. You know, we do a lot of good things we may not give ourselves credit for. So I was seeing all those kind of things, and so the life review is this memory trip, and here's the second most important part about it. And the second-fold purpose of the life review is that you are heading towards the light at some point, whether you see it or not. That light, I'm putting this matrix in the middle, we'll look at the light in a minute, but this is part of the life review. Different cultures have different types of life review. But when you're having your life review and you're remembering all this, it benefits the entire planet because it's all going into the super mainframe. The soul collects everything. Every experience ever happened. So imagine that. Your life review benefits everybody on planet Earth all through history. Imagine that. It's important stuff. It's universal importance. And so this, I call it the big super mainframe, but it's all being stored there. Call it the cosmic records. It's really the soul of us all. And it benefits all of us. And then when you do go through the light, you benefit from that in many ways. And of course, the more conscious you become, the more you benefit from it. And we have infinite incarnations, so there's no rush. Take your time if you want to. Don't feel pressed to do everything in one life. It's impossible, really. And so all this is going into this super matrix, the soul. And so it's a very important thing to have. It's super important to have these life reviews. For me, when my life review ended, I found myself in this darkness again. But oddly enough, an angel appeared to me. And it was a golden angel. I was trying to get gold on this. It was a golden angel. And I didn't believe in angels. You know? And I now can tell you, because I've had 33 years of going to the light every day and lights and things too, that what will immediately play, the first thing that's going to play is whatever you learned before you're 6 or 7. And I've been raised Catholic, and there was a lot of religion in there I didn't know I had. And it was starting to play. And one of the things was, I'd always thought of angels as figurines, with a candle in the head, that kind of. And this appeared as a golden figurine-type angel, but it was alive, because I was lost. And I thought I was going to be there forever, and I was kind of starting to beg for, I was panicking, starting to beg for help. And this angel appeared, and I thought, the first thing I said was, "You're the angel of death." All I knew about. And the angel said something very surprising. He said, "No, I'm Mellen, and I'm your guardian angel. And now I know your higher self aspect." And that's why I changed my name when I came back to Mellen Thomas Benedict. And so this angel, I was begging, "Why do I have help?" All I wanted was help. And the angel told me this: that light that that little light, there was always this little light somewhere. I could see like I'd get glimpses of a little speck of light. But the angel told me that light starts in your heart. That's where it starts. It doesn't start at this end. It starts at this end for you. And to focus on that. And then the angel said something really crazy. "You've got to love your life." And I thought, "Are you crazy? Love my life?" And I struggled with that, but I still got help. And it still took years later even to get the whole thing. But I did focus on this light, and the connection was made. And we're all connected to this light endlessly. It can never be cut off, and it can never be perverted or polluted. It's no matter what you think you've done, no matter what shaman has told you this, or voodoo guy, you can never be cut off from it, even if you think you are. So I started connecting this trail, and then I ended up, for me it was not, I started moving towards this light and it was getting bigger, but for me it was not really a tunnel like everybody talks about. Not all near death, there's only a few percentage of people see tunnels. But since the internet, everybody sees tunnels. So, but before the internet, it was the majority were not seeing tunnels. It was a more different kind of an experience. For me, what it looked like was this. It looked like I was at the bottom of the ocean, and there was water, the light, and I was trying to get to the top of that, and it felt impossible. Like you don't have enough breath or energy. And I was just trying to get to this surface, like being at the bottom of the ocean. And so I struggled, and I finally popped in front of this light that people talk about. And this is just an image I had made up, but you can't describe it really, and it probably can never be described. But I was in front of this light all of a sudden, and I said to the light, I was shocked, but I felt this presence that near death was talked about, and I blurted out, like I guess any good atheist would be, "Are you God?" And the second thought was, I'm in a lot of trouble. Because I'm someone that really picked on God. and although I didn't believe in God when I was in hospice, I blamed God and my parents and everybody for everything. And so even though you don't believe in God, you'll end up blaming God and everybody else for it. I blame the whole world. How I got sick was, I'll put a bookmark here, is the seed of my disease started back in the 60s. The seed of my brain cancer. And that was because, although I wasn't religious, ever since Rachel Carson's book Silent Spring, I was an ecologist. But all the experts, even her at the time, were saying, this is in the 60s, that if mankind stopped everything they were doing then, it was still too late. And I believe them. And we believe experts, and historically, and I'll show it tomorrow in the seminar, experts have been more wrong than they've ever been right. Why do we believe them? We call them futurists, we call them experts, and they've been more wrong than they've ever been right. In fact, if they're right, it's like a career. You get one prophecy right, then it's a career. You're famous forever. But what got me was that everything I've read and all the experts were saying, it's over, and then what really got me was, and these are still floating around out there, people still using them. I got a magazine. And in the magazine, it was talking about ecology and the Earth. And they had put two photographs together. And the photographs one was the city of Los Angeles from the air. And right next to it was a micro photograph of a cancer cell. And they looked exactly similar. Because, Los Angeles never had city planning. Never. But I realized now they must have had to look real hard for that cancer picture to match. Back then I just bought it instantly. But it made sense to me. You know, a lot of things make sense to us. It's not really right or makes sense. But in that and it said at the bottom, you know, is humanity a cancer? And that's where I got my thought in my heart of hearts, that maybe nature went wrong and there was a mutation and humans were a malignant cancer on planet Earth. And that was what I thought about humans in my heart of hearts. Because you put that stuff away, you don't think about it a lot until it comes up occasionally. It's in your attitude, though. It's in the way you look at things. And I think this kind of thing affected a lot of people in my generation, almost 65 now. But I know people who didn't have children because of all that. They didn't want to bring a child into this world, in this generation. Plus it was the peak of the Cold War, and the smartest people on the planet, our leaders, came up with MAD, mutual assured destruction, as the plan. So it was crazy times. And so that, I didn't realize till I had my near-death experience that was the seed of my brain cancer. I was thinking humans were a cancer, and this thinking machine was in a human. So be very careful about your worldview. Examine it. Examine your worldview and see if you even really believe in it, or just pick it up and cut and paste it from somebody else's. Really check out what your worldview is, because it will affect your whole life, your immune system, your health, your children, everything about you. So clear up that worldview, especially if you've got a really negative one, like I had. And that's how I developed brain cancer, actually. So I'm in front of a light, and I'm saying, are you God? And feeling like, uh-oh, what's next? Because what if all those nuns were right? I really am in trouble. And your soul knows you better than anybody. Call it the light. Knows you better than anybody. And it will speak to you at whatever level you're at, whatever metaphor you're living in, whatever mythology you're living in. Because we are mythical beings. And we live in our metaphors more than common sense, more than science. We're metaphorical beings. And we live in our metaphors more than anything else. That's why we love poetry, and we love the movies, and we love this stuff. So it will speak to you no matter what level you're at. Child level, adult level, Christian level, Muslim level. Your soul will speak to you, and it will speak to you like you'll feel like no one's ever known you before but this. You know, it speaks to you like you've never been understood before. So when I asked the question, are you God? The light said back to me, who and what is not God? And I got it. It meant to me that if I wanted to tell you who and what God is, I'd have to name every particle, every planet, and the entire universe. And of course, that would take more than forever. So this was a good phrase. It was good. But that was just the first question. And at that moment, and the researchers say this is where my experience was unique, and that is that I got this feeling that this was an interactive experience. I wasn't like on a roller coaster ride through near-death land. And I didn't even know the word was near-death at the time, you know. But I realized it was interactive. And they say this is the first time they've ever heard of that in all the research. And when I realized that, I kind of wanted to stall. So I said, I have some questions. Can we talk? And the light said, sure, what you got? And that began a very long conversation, which many people have read about. And although the entire experience seemed like it took a second for me, it's taken 30 plus years to even tell half the story. You know, it's without time. And so I began this conversation with the light. Now, I want to explain something that near-deathers experience, and that's this euphoria that they all talk about, how wonderful it is. Most of them don't understand it because they're still at a child level of mentality and emotions. I was someone that was at a different, I wasn't programmed like normal or anything. But I only learned this later with my visitations with the light, not then, because I felt just what everybody else talks about. This is a good image of how it feels. With that light, you feel like you're in the great hands, and you feel like a child that has no worry. And I can tell you from my visitations that is created by something very interesting, and that is when you drop what I call the gravity body, the heavy body, and you are free of that, which is not the. I have to tell you right now, the near-death experience is not the best thing that ever happened to me. It's not the greatest thing. The greatest thing that ever happened to me is I got my feet on the ground on planet Earth. The near-death experience was just a moment in my life. And so a lot of people, I'll talk about that in a little bit, But a lot of people talk about it as the greatest thing that ever happened to them, and really, they're not getting it. So this feeling of euphoria and acceptance and non-judgment is what the soul feels. And it's in your soul. It's what you feel. It's not being given to you. It's a shared thing between you and we're just one soul, you know. And so when you drop the heavy gravity body and you never have to think about rent, food, mortgages, stress, you don't have to think about career or anything, and this is all subconscious, it is a euphoric experience. It's like, imagine winning the greatest lottery on the planet. It's that good. It's that good. But it is not what the light is giving you, it's what you already are. It's this exchange, this awareness, this knowing. And as you mature in your experience, and there's usually a 5 to 7 year assimilation period until recently. Now you have a near death experience, you write a book right away. There's no assimilation. But typically, in solid research before the internet, there's always assimilation period. There's a natural period of it. It's a big experience. It takes a while to really mature with it. I'm into it 33 years and feel like I haven't got it all yet, you know. And so, a very euphoric feeling. I mean, just unbelievable. Again, sometimes I meditate and I ask you to do this, is act like you just won the big lottery. I mean, feel it jump up and down. It's really good for your immune system because you already have one of the biggest lottery in the world, in the universe, by being who you are and being where you are, no matter what you think your life is, high or low. But I was someone that had a real negative attitude. I got all the euphoria. It was great. But then I was trying to stall the experience. You know, I didn't know what was next. I was kind of really hesitant. So when the light said, okay, what you got, my first question was to the light was this: why is humanity so dark and doomed? Why even bother with humanity? That was my real question. That's what killed me, is believing this. And that's part of the image of my soul. I mean, my heart at the time, not my soul. And so I asked the light, why is humanity so dark and doomed? I mean, why even bother with all this? And then the light turned into a mandala. And I only learned what that word was later. But it was this like living image that it breathed me into. And I'm going to show you what it was like. The light sucked me inside the light. I went inside the light and went into this mandala that you're going to see. I went into this mandala that I call the mandala of human souls. And it seemed like I could look into every human soul that had ever been, including my own. And to my amazement, I couldn't see any darkness at all, ever. There's no darkness in the human soul, no matter who you've been, no matter what you've done. And the light said to me, "Oh, beautiful human." And that changed my life. That changed my life. Oh, beautiful human. That's how the soul looks at us. And that's what we are. We are the beautiful children of the universe. And that was a pretty amazing experience. It changed my attitude on humanity. There's nobody that's ever lived that's their soul has been tainted. Nobody ever. After that, it's just judgment, because you don't get judged. What some people don't like to hear is that with the light, the saint and the sinner stand alike. When you go through that light, it's a whole different process. But some really, what you may think are evil people, have really had a hell of a life of you, and think about how they judge themselves. But this is the message I got: is that we are loved. Not only we are loved in the soul is the universe. This is a whole total soul experience. And so I had a lot of questions for the light, and I asked every question I could think of at the time. And it seemed like it took a long time, but the light was giving me these answers that satisfied me to my satisfaction. And I can say that because the light will do this for you too. But there came a point in my experience where I thought I was out of questions. I kind of ran out of questions. And then the light reminded me of something. The light said, "But what was your first question?" And I knew what it meant, because it was talking my language. It was talking to my soul. And what the light meant was that there's a time when we're very young that we ask our first serious question about the universe. It could be, why is the sky blue? Or, Mommy, how did I get here? But because I've been in Catholic boarding school being told I'm going to hell forever, I had started thinking, and I forgot all about this, by the way. I'd forgotten my first question. We usually do. You get into puberty, get out of the alpha, you get brain waves and all that, and you get into beta, and that's really the stress brain wave. I'd forgotten my question, but the light reminded me, and I got it in. Oh. My first question was interesting because I was always told about this attorney thing. It was going to be a bad thing, for me anyway. And so I started very young. I don't know, 5th grade. I don't know. It was early. I started contemplating at night, looking out my little window by my bed. If there is a God, why would He create a short, pathetic life where you kind of live long enough to kind of get a grip on things, make a little money, then you die, And those are the thoughts I had. I kept those thoughts. I had childish thoughts at first, but those thoughts kept maturing. Just like I said, when I became aware of money, I went, well, I'm not going to live long enough to make a lot of money, And so, so my first question, my first serious question, oddly enough, and it used to bug my parents and everybody, was, why do we grow old and die? That seemed to be the most important one. If there was a creator or an intelligent being, why would you even bother doing that? I mean, what's the point? If you're really all that intelligent and all that cool and all that powerful. So that was my first one. Why do we grow old and die? And until I was in puberty, my parents said I used to ask everybody that question. If I even heard you were a doctor, I'd run right up and ask you. And of course, nobody really could tell me. And it turns out one of my friends in high school turned out to be a very famous doctor now in research, and they're kind of looking at death as a disease now. It's curable. It's interesting how far it's come. But so the light reminded me of my first question. So I said, oh yeah. Why do we grow old and die? The big one, And this is what happened. The light, out of the light, and this is kind of it's hard to really do the real images, but out of the light came 2 columns of light in front of me. And out of the right column, and I didn't even get it, all I heard was Dinshaw. And this little guy with kind of an Indian voice stepped out and started educating me, started downloading me. And any of you know who Dinshaw, I can't even say the last name to this day, Galadali, You know who he was? He was the first scientific healer of light. And after World War I, he moved to America and his family in New Jersey. He was the first one to really build scientific devices to heal people with light. He had glass made that was the right frequencies, and so he was educating me on all the different wavelengths of light, and he made these called chromoscopes that were sold, and he was healing people right and left. And a little bad luck for him is about the time he was getting really famous, a little upstart organization called FDA got started, who was out to get, their original mission was to get rid of the snake oil salesman. But he was so well known that they really made his life hell. But he was the first scientific person to really make scientific instruments for the healing of light. And so he was downloading he was like happy to download everything he could to me about light, and what it was good for. And when he finished, out of the left column, this guy stepped out. And I didn't get a name for this one. I really just saw this kind of an image. And it was a short, portly guy with a funny hat and a mustache. And it turned out to be Walter Russell, which I didn't even know until I met P.H. Allen. I didn't even know who it was. I just knew it was this great guy. And so this guy stepped out of this column of light, and he said, he started educating me. And he was very happy to. It's like, I don't think he gets called on a lot. Turns out, I now know because I've researched him ever since I met Phyllis. He was one of America's great Renaissance men. He was incredible. He's worked with IBM. He had the University of Light in Charlottesville, Virginia, which is still around. His whole thing, he was so excited to tell me about electrons and photons. And starlight was the essence of life. And he was very happy to give me these frequencies and wavelengths, and I didn't even know what it meant at the time. I was just getting these numbers, which went into my mind indelibly. And he was very happy to be giving me all this information. And then he started drawing these things in the air. This is fractal geometry. I didn't even know that at the time. The hippies loved this stuff, the T-shirts. But fractal geometry, it turns out, was invented in the 1800s, developed in the 1800s. But it was so complicated that we really had to wait till we had supercomputers to really start using it. But Walter Russell was drawing and making paintings of fractal geometry by hand before computers. So he was gladly just drawing those in the air for me, and they were alive. They were spinning off, in fractals. And he was trying to tell me that fractal geometry is God's geometry. He's a very spiritual guy, I guess. And this is God's mathematics. And he was trying to explain to me everything you could do with fractals. And if you understand how important fractal geometry has become in our life today, it's infected everything from animation to quantum physics. It's amazing how important that became once we could use it, And so he was explaining all this to me, and here's what he told me. This is an image of fractal geometry. This is Mendel's, and he was a famous fractal guy. And this is very famous. A lot of people... wait, hold on. Okay, now, it's starting. Hold on. Let me go back. I think I hit the wrong button. Okay. So, this is Mendel said, the thing about fractal geometry that's fascinating is, and it's just like the universe, there's nothing new and nothing old. Things are always the same and always changing. And he was explaining to me that when you have a child, that is your biological fractal. That is and it's a part of reincarnation. You are reincarnating. Because there's multiple layers of reincarnation that I learned a lot about when I asked that question. And I teach whole courses on the quantum physics of reincarnation. I learned that reincarnation is more real than even the spiritual people imagine. And it's a real science in the near future. But he was trying to explain to me how this related to even reincarnation. And I'll run this little film for you. Okay. So this is a Mandelbrot set, and you'll notice as you look at it, it's always the same image, but it's going to freak you out how it changes. It's always the same. And he was explaining that if you understand this, you can track patterns of anything. You can track even past lives. You can track your patterns that will lead you into the future, because all karma is just cause and effect. It's a continuum. And if you watch this as we go, you think you come to the end of something, and then it begins again. It never ends. Just like when you die, you just open your eyes again. A new fractal begins. And it's always the same, and always different. And no matter which corridor the soul enters, the soul comes out. Lives enter, lives go out, universes come and go, and at times it may look completely foreign to you, but again, it's still the same thing. It's the same soul image. And this repeats. You see, infinity is not a good word, because infinity is only a moment. It's not a long thing at all. But this is how we can track past lives, we can track patterns into the future, we can figure out how nature makes a leaf, how a snail shell is made, and it always goes, it's always going. How it started, we will never know. There'll never be an answer for that. Not even the light can answer that. And you end up in places you think you've never been before, and then all of a sudden you realize you've been here before. Deja vu again. Deja vu is fractal. And so you may think you're entering a new universe, even if you're a star traveler, and the minute you get there, a new one begins. Every thought you have literally creates another dimension. So how many dimensions are there? You can't count them. Every idea you have will actually create a dimension. And he's trying to explain this to me, how galaxies form, how our life is totally involved in this, and he called this God's mathematics. And I always thought it was funny that when you get to when you see a mandible sit like this, it almost looks like Buddha, Very interesting, huh? And so that was some of the main things I learned. And tomorrow, and I'm not over yet, don't worry, but tomorrow I'm going to teach you the greatest things I ever learned from the light, called the Spirit of Gaia, the natural view of spirit. Because when you call something metaphysical, supernatural, or paranormal, now you've separated it. Once you leave the nature of the universe, the nature of your soul, you're in la-la land. And there's a lot of la-la land around. People that think they're so special, nature doesn't apply to them. How many times we learned that lesson? So everything is natural. And what we call supernatural now we're going to understand is new physics, and physics is sacred. And the other thing I've learned, and I'll talk about tomorrow, is that biology is sacred. I've got a whole website that's not up yet called Sacred Biology. So science became sacred stuff to me, and it helped me understand the universe better. And it helped me understand what we call psychic stuff. All that's understandable. All of it's natural. There's nothing supernatural about it at all. Did you know that everything on this planet is psychic? From bacteria to plants to humans? And psychic, what we call psychic ability in humans, evolved originally as survival mechanisms. Sensing danger, sensing vibes, sensing predators, sensing water, sensing food. And it's in every part of our system, from bacteria to plants to humans. In humans, it's gone to a much higher order, which can be misused or can be silly sometimes. But the human brain can take it to the furthest it's been ever on this planet. So it's all very natural. And you started with at the beginning of our evolution. It's always been here. It's just that people have separated it out, and it shouldn't be separated out. Now, another little bit about my afterlife is that my relationship with the light, right from the beginning, was one in which I would ask the light, "Can I bring anything back?" You know, and the light said, "Sure, let's figure it out." And so my experience with the light very quickly evolved into what I call a practical application of higher consciousness. In other words, if I'm a channeler, I channel nuts and bolts. And over a series of years, I finally met people who could fund research to see if I knew anything. It was these 7-year periods in my life where I found people that would give me a chance and fund me in millions of dollars for research. And talk about being lucky, because I didn't know what I was talking about. I didn't realize until people like Glenn Ryan and the Bruce Liptons and all that came in as consultants way back, like from '87 on. And I would start talking and go, "Oh, well, that's quantum biology. Oh, that's this. That's that. Oh, that frequency, 632.2, that's magic, in wavelengths for healing." And because it was the field of phototherapy, which is what Walter Russell and Genshaw was pointing me at, was kind of ivory tower stuff back then. I got into phototherapy before LEDs were good for anything. We still had to use lasers. And the field of phototherapy was developed by the Hungarians like 60, 70 years ago, so it's a really new science. But it was developed for veterinarians in the beginning, for wound healing. And then lots and lots, by the time I got into it, it was still a very ivory tower, there was no internet. They had already done so many animal experiments that, lucky for me, the timing was right, that by the time I awoke and people realized what I was doing, we didn't have to do animal experiments anymore, we could go right to humans. And we did. But the interesting thing is that in the field of phototherapy, most people didn't know about it because it was ivory tower, there was no internet. So lucky for me, Bruce Lipton, who was at Stanford at the time, his girlfriend at the time was a librarian at Stanford Medical School. And she knew this thing called Medline. You ever heard about it? Medline? And I hired her to do some research for me. And when she got the research back, it was right on the money, everything I've been saying. Right on the money, which gave us even more hope. So more think tanks, and then we got to the phase in the next 7 years of building delivery systems. And I've become an expert in delivery systems because if you understand phototherapy, there's only 4 bioactive wavelengths that are beneficial to human beings out of all sunlight. Only 4, and you can't patent them. And I was into phototherapy before anti-aging became a business. And I've invented dental appliances because I got very interested in longevity and quality of life. And I was told, light's the way to do it. Photons, electrons, all that. This is the way to do it. This is all life anywhere in the universe does this. It's called electron transport and biophotons, in other words. But so we would build these devices and test them, and we would. I was the first person. In the beginning, we were doing wound healing and getting spectacular results, as others were at the time. But I was able to come up with very novel delivery systems, and you can literally, in many cases, watch a wound heal. It's amazing how fast they'll heal. And I got the idea one day that, well, if we can do a wound and oncological support for chemo, radiation, and surgery, then would it be possible to get the whole body to go into just regeneration, keep renewing itself? And so that work had never been done before. So we had great funding at the time. We hired all these doctors and these think tanks, and let me tell you, putting a clinical together is the most mind-numbing experiences I've ever been through. Because you can spend a lot of money on tests that mean nothing in the end because somebody can just pull one thread and go, oh, you forgot something. Mind-numbing experiences. But so because no one had ever done this, there was no one lab that did everything, because we needed to check everything in the human body. Because I was thinking, we're now going into the field of systemic regeneration. And so we picked 10 major labs in the U.S. We stayed away from alternative medicine, anything New Age, because I don't want to fight their fight. There's a lot of good stuff out there, but they haven't done their work to prove their stuff. I know there's really good stuff out there that works, but I'm not holding it up to a doctor. I believe in Kirlian, the proper use of it, not the New Age use, but I will never hold that up to a doctor as any evidence. So it was blood, saliva, and urine. And we embarked on a long project studying the long-term effects of this kind of phototherapy, building devices like this one. When I channel the light, I am the designer. I get the whole designs and what the designs are used for. I design everything, every little piece of this. This arm especially made in Norway because it's the only person I could get to do what I wanted. And LEDs were custom made for us at the time. I was the first to kind of pioneer multi-wavelength LEDs. And all kinds of delivery systems. And in the beginning, these things were sold for a lot of money to corporations. And my products are in 20 countries helping people already. And then one of the things that I learned, because over the last almost 30 years now, I've become an expert in who lives to be 101. I became fascinated about it. And there are databases that themselves are over 100 years old now, studying 100-year-olds. It's amazing. And we're talking, when you study 100-year-olds, it has to be documented birth records, not the Hunzas, which were never proven. They didn't keep birth records, not a Greek yogurt island, they don't have the stresses we do. This had to work for us. And originally I was developing this stuff for myself. I never thought about going into business until we needed more money and the business guys started showing up. And we healed many a business guy and their families. That's how I won people over in the beginning. We were changing their families. And that's when trouble began too. And the sharks smell the money. And so the studies came back in spectacular. Really amazing. And I remember when the first studies started coming back in, and we were doing 10 major labs in America to cover the entire system. And the doctors were jumping up and down when I went in and they were trying to, I said, well, I don't even know what that means. And they were going, oh my God, it works. I said, well, I knew it would. So we pioneered in different kinds of devices. I've always wanted to get a device cheap enough and practical enough for the average person. Because if you really understand this kind of phototherapy, it's something you're going to want to do every day. Now, we had to go from medical devices to spa devices, $20,000 spa devices and all that. How many days a week can you go to a spa? But I couldn't get corporations interested in these smaller devices because everything was going very well. And but the best use of phototherapy is use it every day because you know what your aura is? Well, one of the aspects of your aura, it's biophotonic. When an aura is energy leaving your body forever. You're watching energy leave your body 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. To a quantum biologist, you're kind of similar to a wet cell. And your mitochondrial DNA looks like a battery capacitor. And if you look at an electron microscope. And I do whole lectures on this. But so you might be surprised that with documented birth records, people living the longest in the world are Americans. Diet is not a common factor. Sorry to say. So some people really think diet's going to be. I love to, I take care of myself, but diet is not been a common factor. We're talking about drinkers, smokers, biscuits and gravy every day, and these people are living. And I won't get into that too much because it's one of my favorite subjects. I do whole seminars on that. But we were proving you have two ages in your life. You have your chronological age, which actually means nothing to nature. It's only good for a birthday party and an astrology chart. It means nothing in nature. Your biological age, which we can measure very accurately for 20 or more, over 20 years now, you've been able to measure your biological age. And most of us are 20 to 40 years older than you think you are. It's called the burn rate. And that's because as an energy system, you're burning energy all day. You ever see somebody in a night vision scope? They glow in the dark. That's your biophotons. That's energy leaving your body. But you're a battery, so it's going to run down. And humans have not got the best processing system on the planet. We have one of the poorest stomachs on the planet. Chicken has a better stomach than us. So there comes a point in your life where you start aging, which is really entropy. And now you're not making enough energy to sustain the cells and the repair rate, called the burn rate. So we were able to prove that we were the first to really prove, and this is secret sauce stuff, that we could lower the biological age below that of the chronological age. Well, that's true anti-aging. We could slow down your aging dramatically, and I'm evidence of it. I used to tell my friends it'll take you 20 years to believe me, and they look like my father now. Many of them look like my grandfather, and they're starting to believe me all of a sudden. But what happened along the way was that anti-aging became a business. And I kind of missed it in the beginning because I was so serious. I had developed a dental device because the number one thing in 100-year-olds is good teeth or no teeth. It's the number one plague of animals and humans in all of history. Your teeth are going to be the most offense to your immune system you can imagine. It's the best investment in your life is to take care of your teeth first. Don't invest in stock. Invest in your teeth first. And that's a great story about dental, and we've made such great strides. And I work with some of the best dentists on the planet now. I've been developing devices for years to go in your mouth and other places. And so we were experimenting with these dental devices I made after dental surgery and whatever, and with a very famous dentist, a father of one of the fathers and co-founders of the American Laser Dental Association. And his clients were coming back because their wrinkles were going away. And he said, why is this? Oh, that's a side effect. Any healing, it's collagen's the easiest thing to do. If that's, he went, no, wrinkles. Finally, I smelled the coffee. But we have to thank the baby boomers and vanity for saving our lives. There's a profound side to vanity. Because, forgive me if there's any doctors in the room, but most doctors follow the money, whatever the trend is. And med spas are the trend now. Baby boomers started to demand anti-aging products, non-invasive ones, and that created what we have today. It wasn't the doctors. The researchers had all this stuff that had not even been applied yet to this. I wasn't even thinking about it. But anti-aging is true health. And it's not how long you live, it's how long you can extend the quality of your life. And for me, I knew from I'm a history buff and all that, I knew that the best work on the planet is usually done by people over 50, not by child prodigies. But then we start burning out, And so I was developing a technology to extend life and the quality of life and to extend the golden years, our cognitive functioning years, so we could do great planet. That was my original goal. And then the anti-aging came in to probably pay for it. So it's a fascinating story how it evolved and how far it's come nowadays. But a little history. This was a great device. This is one of the first full body devices, and now I can do everything from your face, every organ in your body, and it's easy to test. It's easy to test and quick to test every organ in your body. It's amazing, and that's a whole other story. I could do a whole phototherapy thing next time. But this was the first full body device because there's a lot to this. There's a whole science that we discovered on how to get the body to do this and timing and everything. So in a half hour, your aging starts going down. It's amazing and can be tested very easily. These are some of the people I've worked with. This is Stephen Jacques, University of Oregon Medical School. I've taken courses with him for I don't know how long. And he's I think, the top tissue optics person in the country, maybe the world. And for me, studying tissue optics was a Rosetta Stone on how to build delivery systems. And so he's like a god to me. And this is the dentist I was talking about, Dr. Robert Barr. And all kinds of, we're going to come out with toothbrushes. There's all kinds of devices that I've developed that are already out around the world, by the way. Here's some of the more exotic things. This was for post-surgical. They called it the Hannibal Lecter. Other exotic full-body systems, mainly focusing on the face. And you may recognize this great guy, Glenn Ryan. You know, Cleve Baxter, the guy who discovered plants have feelings in the 60s. The light told me to look him up about 87. Look up this Baxter guy. So I got to meet him, and we've been friends ever since. And the light told me that Cleve Baxter, who discovered primary perception, check it out, had discovered something as important as Newton or anybody else had ever discovered anything on this planet. And he wouldn't be known for it until after he's dead. And asked me to take care of him, which I've tried to do. And he's not an easy guy to take care of. But, so he is known in the future as a saint almost. This guy's got reverence in the future. I mean, this guy really discovered something amazing once you look into it and understand it. It's already affecting your life. You don't even know it, but he's discovered how it's going to apply. And this was early experiments that I funded, looking at DNA as a signal processor. Because in the early days, it was all DNA and cell receptors and all that. We've gone way beyond that since then. But I invented a little chip made from DNA. And this was one of the readouts. And here's the little thing plugged into all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And because I knew it was going to work, I'm the guy that took this picture. I just stood back as they turned it on and waited for the moment of discovery. And Cleve was so happy. Look at that. And there, look at the shock. Whoa, it works. It has future implications for chemoradiation and giving you exact dose and communications and all sorts of stuff that's going to be very interesting in the future. These days I was 20 years ahead, and that's a lonely place to be. I try not to get maybe 2 or 3 years ahead these days. So that's my talk. We're going to leave the rest open for questions and answers. So thank you very much. And I rarely do questions and answers anymore, but for this audience and the Rhine Center, I'll try to answer whatever I can. I may not have information. I'm not interested in everything. I don't know everything. So, and I don't make it up. So if I don't know something, I don't know it. So, thanks.
Thank you, Mellen. You're such a sweet and kind man. I just want to say this. And it was very interesting to me how you brought this from your personal experience and your own revelations and bring this into practical applications that can help people. That's very, very impressive.
Thanks.
I'm very
That's my goal. Yeah.
So we do have some time for some questions.
Well, they seem stunned.
I'm going to start. Well, and please wait for the microphone since we are still broadcasting.
That was delightful. Where are these?
Is that all?
Is it working?
Oh, there we go.
Okay, that was really awesome. Thank you. Where are these incredible devices?
All over the country and the world. If you want my most current website on my latest, which you can get the website off there and go check it out for yourself, because I will continue putting out devices. Now I'm very interested in devices everybody can afford. Because I know that I will be known in this lifetime as the guy that really got the idea of photocharging the human body to be as common as taking a shower, common as brushing your teeth. When you understand when you photocharge your body every day, you're gonna be slowing down that entropy. You're gonna be extending life, and you're gonna be feeling a lot better. So check out the website. It's ultraspalightTherapy.com is what I'm working on now. So it's out there.
And thank you for your emphasis on the oral hygiene.
Most important thing.
Ever heard of oil pulling?
Who?
Oil pulling? It's Ayurvedic.
I'm not into Ayurvedic. I have a sort of an understanding of it, but
It's agreeing with what you're saying.
great. Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to ask, was the near-death experience for you like a reset? And how long did it take for what you had died from to clear up?
Yeah, it was a major reset. Because I was clueless and thick as a brick and didn't know it, which is, everybody sees your stuff but you when you're that thick. I was the only one that didn't see it. I started recovering for the first week or so in hospice. I was so multidimensional, I didn't know if I was here or there. And my angel caretaker was a bit of a Christian, but not a preachy one. And she'd ask me to pray for my soul, and I'd argue with her and all that. But she was quite an angel, but she wasn't a preachy one. But it unnerved her. It unnerved her deeply when this happened. So for days, when she'd walk by me, I didn't know if I was here or not. And I would say, "Am I alive? Am I alive?" And she would say, "You were dead. You were dead." I know you were dead. It really unnerved her greatly. And then I was regenerating. I'm not sure when the healing happened. It may have been in the Mandala of Human Souls. It may have been sometime later. But I can tell you this, that I got a real lesson when I asked about this silly stuff, reincarnation. So by the time the experience was ending, I was never told I was to come back or anything. I understood that I understood from the nature of reincarnation and the quantum physics of it that I would be reincarnated. I knew it. It's true. So I was expecting to come back as a baby. And maybe an indigo child, we call them now. That was kind of what I was thinking. And when I was put back in my same body, they didn't let me skip a second. You don't skip graves. I thought, what a burn. I still have my lousy life. But I keep hearing the angels say, you'd have to love your life. So I started that mantra, which has spread around the world since then. I love my life thing. And so I thought it was a real burn. And many near-deathers have this depression afterwards. You read about it. And there's a high divorce rate among near-deathers and things like that. And it doesn't make you more functional in some cases. And in some cases, it made me a little dysfunctional. I was so super sentient for the first couple of years that I could hear people's thoughts. And you don't want to hear most of this. You don't want to hear it. And I couldn't be social because I'd go to a party or, say, a club or a bar. And human emotions have, like, animal sounds. So you'd be in a place, you'd see a beautiful woman walking, you'd hear this, like the jungle. Whoa! You're like, oh my God. So, and you could tell if someone was suicidal or not. Many times I could tell someone was suicidal, things like that. And most of the things people are thinking, you just don't need to hear, And so I became antisocial. I was asking the light about this in one of my visitations. I didn't know most people weren't doing. I didn't know any near-deathers. I just knew that during the first 2 years, the light would come. I'd say, "Come and take me," and it would take me out of my body. And each time I thought I was dying again because it scared me. But I would be with the light, and the light would show me my body was okay and it was functioning. And then we'd have these conversations. But I had a kind of an agreement with the light that every time we met, I wanted to bring something back. And that began a relationship with something practical. What can I bring back? It's practical. There are great philosophers and all that. I'm not one of them. But I wanted to do something really practical. Now that settled down to where it became comfortable. And people have asked me many times, can you teach me? And how do you do it and all that? It's been endless questions. And we've even done think tanks on it. And I can tell you, it's something that probably can't be taught but can be learned. It's like if you hang out with a shaman. It's beyond words. But more than that, I try to tell people it's not an intellectual process. The universe is mostly not intellectual. So if you're just looking at the universe in the intellectual wavelength, you're going to miss most of it. Same thing if you're just looking at it in the spiritual realm. You're going to miss most of the universe. So it's like a rainbow. Look at everything. And the Gaia thing tomorrow is about looking at the whole picture. Because most of us are looking at this great life, this painting called life, 1 inch at a time. And to some people it looks like hell, and to other people it looks like heaven, and to other people it goes, I don't know what that means. I don't know what my life means. But you're only seeing it at 1 inch at a time. So the Gaia perspective is opening up to that. And so I got very comfortable, and the way I go back to the light is an emotional connection. I never forgot the emotion. It gets me anytime I think about it. And with that emotional connection, I can go there. And I've worked with think tanks. I've done a lot of, in the early days, a lot of double-blind things, genetic diseases and things like that. And we learned early on that the most important thing is the answers are easy. Did you know that? all the answers to any of your problems are easy. The real problem is the right question. So once we learned to formulate the right question, we got more valuable information. You say that was kind of interesting. And then I worked on so many projects over the years that we proved things, we did great things, and then everybody went their way. Happens all the time if you know researchers. There's a great project with great hope, and the funding goes, or the group breaks up, and it just goes somewhere. And but I asked the light about this one because I get kind of frustrated. I'm doing all this work, and some of it gets out, and some doesn't. And everybody agrees it was good and useful. And the light said, "Well, just remember, this time in history, humanity is more interested in the questions than the answers. You can give all the answers you want and not get a lot of interest." And so you have to live with that. So it became more and more comfortable. But I tell you, it's going and working with the light is more like music. And you can start out with chopsticks and then become a concert pianist. So I put enough time in it to become a concert pianist. But it's more like that. It's not an intellectual process. That comes. I mean, that you can get that knowledge if you formulate the situation properly. But that's kind of how I answer that. Yes.
So you're still going back to the light and getting more information, is that correct? And so you can teach us, or we can learn how to become concert pianists for those of us who want to be healers?
It may be something that I'm not the best teacher. I've had a chance in my life to be in front of masters who themselves were famous, but they themselves were not good teachers. You ever notice that? I may be one of those. But who knows? Who knows? But I can tell you this, you don't have to die. And I would suggest hypnosis. Hypnosis, even the light told me this, that's why I became I studied it and got certified and became a clinical hypnotherapist many years ago, and have benefited from it greatly, both personally and I used to be a therapist with people, with past life regression as my specialty, just hypnotically. And I can tell you, hypnosis is still the most underestimated tool in the world. When you mine the human consciousness, it's a gold mine. And you never know. I've done many experiments where we take people and we kind of try to gold mine their brain. And you'd be surprised. We had a shoe salesman once that stunned us with what was in his brain, what would come out of his mind. And we all have this facility. And so hypnosis, self-hypnosis, very important. Self-hypnosis is part of the self-initiation process also. So I would encourage it immensely.
I really appreciate your study on light and what you've been telling us. I'm wondering if you got beyond the light enough to see if there were other spiritual entities or in another dimension, or did you pretty much stop where you were?
No, actually, I actually have been able to explore the universe and all of that. Much of it you don't have words for, but the words have come later. Like I was exploring black holes with the light before Hawkins was coming up with his theories, and I predicted things that he came out with later. So I was exploring those kind. You can do that. But many times, if you don't have the training, or you don't know what to call it, it'd be like a shaman trying to tell you about a computer. If you're a computer guy, you understand it. If you see it. If you're a computer guy and you see shamanic stuff, you may not be able to explain it. You see what I mean? So it's kind of whatever your tuning is. But I was able to literally go anywhere I asked to go. But sometimes I didn't understand it, like the void. The void is devoid of experience. I predicted that the whole zero-point energy would come to nothing because it's only metastable and there's very low potential in it, as the cosmologists have discovered in the 90s. The theorists consider there's a tremendous amount of potential in the zero point, but the zero point is only really metastable. But to an observational experimental person who had measured this, the potential was actually very low. The universe doesn't need much. You see what I mean? And for toroidal energy systems, well, I'm not trying to run a solar system. I'm trying to light some light bulbs. That's much easier. So you don't need these kind of things. Free energy is here now. Free energy you'll be able to afford in the next few years. It's coming online. Google's investing in it heavily. The truth is there's no such thing as free energy. There's almost free energy. You're going to be able to buy systems very soon that look like an air conditioner, $3,000-$5,000 that'll run your house. And that's what we're talking. We don't need to run a solar system. We need to light your house, run your refrigerator, you know. And so this world is right around the corner. It's happening right now. You know, like I said, there's some very big companies investing in it and already using it in their facilities and campuses. It's amazing. It's coming along very, very well. What the light told me about free energy is, because a lot of people, there's conspiracies and stuff. Yeah, there's always, everything has a conspiracy, good or bad. I mean, you go out to the forest, there are trees that are trying to dominate. They have a conspiracy to dominate the light. You know, certain bacteria, it's the nature of the universe to have a conspiracy. I have one. It's called Heaven on Earth, and I'm active. I have my own conspiracy. And but what the light said about free energy is that free energy represents free spirit. Are you ready to be free? When you're ready, it's going to be here. It seems like it's showing up as a sign, so we must be ready to be free here pretty soon. Interesting, huh? Fascinating.
I just want to get back to the teeth for a second, because this seemed pretty important. You were mentioning in the research meeting the other day about recommending dentists who use lasers,
Right.
which I'd never heard of before. And then also, when you use the ultra spa device, is that going to, it's treating your face, is that going to treat your teeth at the same time, or do you have to have something?
It started out as a dental device, actually. And we'll have appliances that come out with it, like we've already been testing for several years now. You put in your mouth, and we're getting bone regeneration and things like that. It started out as a dental device, oddly enough, because that was my focus for longevity. Is let's take care of the teeth first. You know, the important thing about dentistry nowadays is, and forgive me for saying this, are there any dentists in the audience? Oh, okay. Just forgive me for saying this. I'm not picking on anybody. But I've been able to work with laser dentistry is at another level, because if you look at the micro photographs of when you drill a tooth, when you drill in, the drill actually pushes part of the bacteria into the fresh dentin as you go. It's microscopically, it's not clean at all. But nowadays, with the laser dentist, you can get in there, and the materials, you can have a root canal now that's perfectly safe, will not conduct electricity, and you really need to keep them in there if you can, you know. But why we lose our teeth, in longevity speaking, is that the body breaks down in a very wise way. You age in a wise way, typically, unless you've abused yourself or get on the pharmaceutical bandwagon, because then everything's out the window. But when the body starts breaking down, probably 40, 50s, you start noticing it. The first thing it does, because a lot of minerals you take aren't going anywhere, they're just going out in your urine. It's interesting. A lot of the vitamins we're taking aren't going anywhere. You know, we have the most expensive urine in the world. And but your body starts leaching minerals, and it leaches from the jawbone first, not the spine. You know, there are diseases, but I'm talking not disease. And so the plague of history and the modern man is periodontal disease, because the bone shrinks, the teeth get loose, the bacteria, and periodontal disease is a bad disease to have. If you look at the autopsies of the mummies, like Ramses, they don't show you the one side. He died of a massive abscess. It must have been a painful death. And you even see this in some of the Neanderthal bones they found. Animals the same way. So it's very important to take the right kind of minerals, especially if you're in your 40s, maybe earlier, depending on your system. And number one is digestive enzymes, because your body reserves, your pancreatic enzymes, will stop, you run out of them in your 30s or sooner, depending on how much you challenge your body with sugar and alcohol before that, because you can burn those up early in life. So, you know, as you age, you wake up one day and suddenly you can't digest pizza anymore. You know, that day happens. You used to be able to eat cold pizza in the morning, and you can't do it anymore. It's just sitting there. That's a sign now you need digestive enzymes with everything you eat. Everything. Full spectrum enzymes. It'll change your life. And of course, probiotics. So it's very important to understand how this breaks down, and that dental, invest in your teeth before you buy stock in a car company or something. You know, anything else? Oh, I'll tell you this. If anybody wants a biological dental chart, just email me. I'll send you one for free. You know, because every tooth has been identified now to every organ in animals and humans. And like at the Paracelsus Clinic in Switzerland, it's been well known in Europe for a long time. You pull the offending tooth, the cancer will go away, or the disease will clear up. You know, because this is the matrix box of your whole meridian system here also. And so you can have great dentures now. You can have great implants that don't conduct electricity and can be put in biologically. And also dental hygienists use lasers now because they really wound you. They go around, and a lot of dentists, I can't say most, but I'm out in California where most do. But a good dentist, when they're finished working on you, would take a wand and do biostimulation. And it's a red wavelength. And that will be very active for about 72 hours. They want to get you healing real fast, and your hygienist will do the same thing because they wound you. And they'll stimulate it with a wand. So you'll be very actively healed very quickly. I mean, the sooner you speed up healing after surgeries or whatever, the less chance of something going wrong. So if you'll email me, I'll send you one for free. A whole chart of it. Yeah. I'll give you my email right now. It's Mellen, M-E-L-L-E-N. No, it's better if you send it to info@mellenthomas.com. Or just go to my website, mellenthomas.com, and get on the mailing list. It's pretty simple. Even if you spell my name wrong, you'll get it. Can't tell you how many times I've been called Mellen with an O. And how many times I've been called Honeydew. So someone else? Oh, hi.
Hi. Thank you so much. I want to just comment on what I perceive as humility on your part, which I really appreciate. And I'm a physician, an MD, and I wonder what your recommendation or advice would be to a physician who is much more interested in going toward the light than toward the money.
Well, interesting, a lot of doctors they've gone to the light and the money at the same time, because they're using phototherapy. And so it's actually come together nicely. If you became a phototherapist and a doctor, it would be a tremendous thing for your community, so check that out. It's actually comes together very well for doctors. The other thing is that I've learned, and I was very naive in the beginning when we had a huge research facility in the first 7 years, and well-funded, and we were, it was 5,700 square feet with all this light and everything. And I learned a lot about people in that period, because I was very naive. I thought you could heal everybody, and we would drag them in kicking and screaming, we're going to heal you today. And I learned in doing clinicals also, I learned kind of quickly that there are some people that deal with illness well, but can't deal with wellness. But they'll beg you to heal them. They'll try to take up all your time, and if you cure them, they'll die. So, and they're in our field, it was called universal reactors. And you've all met them in your lives. They're people that have had every disease or a certain condition, and they know everything about it. They've been everywhere in the world. They've tried everything, and nothing's worked. And now they're coming to you. I can guarantee you, whatever you've got isn't going to work either. So I had to learn that lesson about how people are. You have so many people that say, "Oh, doctors don't care anymore" or anything. But I've lived long enough to work with so many doctors that I see what the patients do to the doctors. Most doctors really go in the school wanting to help people, but we don't help ourselves. And you keep hurting yourself, and finally they just say, "Here, take a bottle of pills and go home." There's about a 5-year thing that they call jaded starts to happen. But most of them start out with very good intentions, but it's what we do to them. You see what I mean? We turn them into this, something you may not like or you may not think is caring. Think about how we break their hearts all the time. It's fascinating. I've lived to see that, So think about that sometimes, you patients.
I really appreciated what you had to say. You kind of really grabbed me when you talked about not having love receptors as a child, not learning because that was not programmed into you. And I'm wondering if you've developed love receptors over the years.
Well, it was very good meeting and becoming friends with Bruce Lipton to this day. And he's helped me, and yes, I have developed love receptors. It was not easy for me. See, someone that doesn't have these receptors, you have to understand that happiness just doesn't happen. It's a skill you should develop. I didn't understand that. Happiness is a skill for most of us. I've met people, and I love them to be my friends, that have the happy gene, and there are some happy genes. You ever met these? I want to be their friend. I don't have those. But once I learned happiness is a skill, and part of that skill is learning where your boundaries are and paying attention to what upsets you. Because some people say, oh, that's your stuff. Well, a lot of your stuff is really about defending yourself in a good way. There are things, you have a right to have things upset you. You have a right to have things you don't tolerate. Like I can't be with a cigarette smoker or be around them. And there are other things that you can be peculiar about, and it's okay, but somebody else may call you on it and say, it's your stuff. Well, yeah, it's my stuff. Just like some people sometimes may say, oh, you're out of your integrity. I say, no, I'm out of your integrity. I'm still in mine. You get those lines, people pull that on you. Geez. So it's, I think when you learn it's a skill and pay attention to it, you can be happy and a lot happier in your life when you learn not to repeat your patterns. And it took me forever, and I'm still working on some of them, actually. Some of this stuff gets in so deep, and there's no magic formula. You ever go to a healer or somebody and you get cleared, then it all comes back? Because nature loves memory. You have to change the charge on the memory. So there's a different way of doing it. Nature loves memory. That's called evolution. So you change the charge on the memory, now becomes something, something completely positive. Pardon me? No, Lee Lawrence up here, I tell you, the master. Study with them. I tell you, this guy's got the goods. Lee Lawrence up here. One of the, and he's living in your own community. So I didn't mean to plug you too much. I don't know if he even wants customers. I've met a few people in the whole world like him. So, and he's living right here. So another question.
Can you visualize the light frequencies to promote your own healing as opposed to moving towards needing devices to make these changes?
We tested that extensively. Luckily, I was well funded for years, and we had the time and the facilities to test all that. Because I'm a true researcher just wants to know the truth, and a true researcher never cherry picks the information. So people that told us they could do that, we bring in, set up a non-biased study with them. We did so much of that with Qigong masters, healers, all kinds of people. And what I believe, and from experience, is that 99% of the planet or more can't do that right now. Masters are capable of it. And the good news about this day and age is that there are some very good devices that can tell you if you're doing it or not. Because a lot of it's imaginary, And so we're living in a day and age now when there's some very affordable things you can buy that can tell you if you're getting the desired results. Because we literally tested people without any bias whatsoever. We even had monks come in. We had some of the Maharishi people come in. And they could not reproduce what we were doing. Because there's personalities and all kinds of stuff involved in what you're doing. The technology has no personality and never has a bad day. And in the end, you're generating the same energy at this level. There are much higher levels, but that's for other people that are dealing in all that. I'm dealing with this level here in the physical body, which we learned right from the very beginning that as you energize people, they start processing. And so we almost from the beginning would bring in psychologists and psychiatrists to say, take a look at this, we're getting these interesting results. People are processing, they're having visions, they're having memories come back. And it's like, so if you're in psychotherapy and all that, if you don't have the energy to process, it'll take a long time. So I've always seen a very good place in this for therapists, give you the energy and then process too. I think it's a very good process, you know. And I've noticed it in my own life, and I've seen it many, many times in the work that we've done. You activate the system that wants to self-correct. You know, it's what it does. You know, we live in a self-correcting, self-organizing universe, and we're made of the universe. So remember that, you're self-organizing and self-correcting. There will be a time when we don't need devices, of course, but I worked with a real genius for a while, Dr. Galen Hieronymus, a radionics master. And I've lived long enough now to where some of the stories they tell at conferences are really about me. I was that guy, and they're telling me the story. One of which was working with him in radionics. I understood what it was, and I used to help him build them. And he was master of it. And I drew it all on paper one day, and it worked just as well. And he said, we need our mind machines right now, because everything's a mind. Your car is a mind machine. Where did they come from? We're still in a time which we need our mind machines. So the good news is that if you want to practice that, I go for it. It's part of self-initiation, but is it imaginary or not? There's so many ways you can test that now. You know, and the equipment's fairly inexpensive for the rudimentary stuff. So it's a case-by-case issue, but I think most people on the planet are not there yet.
Once a person, for example, would experience being in one of the devices like you showed, could they then, through memory association, reactivate that process for them?
We've looked at that quite deeply because, you know, there's lots of good evidence. You know, when you do fake acupuncture needles, they tend to, I'm a big believer in the placebo effect. But there's something at another level that most people on the planet are going to need assistance with. It's called ATP processing. When you really study the ATP process, you can see if you're adding energy or not. Because the ATP process is all about electrons. Because that's the mitochondrial DNA, that's called the battery in every cell of your body. And it's in everything from bacteria to humans. And if it stopped working, you'd be dead in minutes. All your cells would stop. And that's pure, it looks like a battery capacitor in an electron microscope. So if you're that good, great. You know, I'd say prove it. But in the meantime, we're dealing at this fundamental quantum biology level. And our mind, especially this most recent brain, you know, we've got 3 brains. And this most recent brain I call the star child, and it's the youngest brain on the entire planet. You know, you've seen that chart of evolution where humans have been here about, what, a minute or two? And, well, that's your body. Your brain's been here a second. And this upper brain is so precocious, it thinks it created the universe. It's a very precocious child, very bright child, and it mimics psychic, you know, there's not really psychic activity up here. It's in the other system of your body. The brain, this upper brain, can mind read, which is not psychic. I'm not impressed if a psychic tells me something I already know. That's why some people talking with the dead, they're reading your mind. They're not, you know, they're telling you something you really already know or tuning into. And that's not psychic. That's mind to mind. That's wireless communication. I see that a lot. You know, but it's very important to understand how these systems work. And we're living in a day and age where now we're starting to get a grip on it. We're living in the golden age now. And that's why I hate to see the politicians and all these people trying to steal money from science and education. We shouldn't let it happen. The future that I saw, the light has shown me the future, and when I say the light showed me the future, you really can't predict the future because there is just one moment. And you know that the present is changeable, correct? And if you change your mind, you change your future. You could go off and become a doctor or a dancer. Well, did you know the past is just as changeable? The cat's been out of the bag for a long time. If you're a history scholar, you know this already. Who wrote the history books? Whoever won the war, you know, and whoever got the biggest PR. And history is always changing. So this is that eternal moment of now that's multi-phase. And you can, that's why in past life regression, you can change your past. You can change your story. And I suggest people do change their stories. Like I had sad karma. I had to change my story. And I'm still working on it, you know. But some of us really do need to write a new story and stick with it, you know, because we're smart enough now. The past, present, and future, how do you predict the past is easy. In human evolution up to this moment, wisdom is all hindsight, isn't it? And that's got a time lag in it. And even if you're seeing me, you're not seeing me in real time. You know, and as you hear my voice, I thought of something else to tell you, and you're probably thinking of something else too. And so this is not real-time information we're dealing with. The future wisdom is about foresight, and we've evolved long enough now to develop foresight now. It's called understanding karma, because everything's a pattern, and we are pattern-oriented, whether you like to know it or not. We all fit a type. That's why astrology works. And so foresight is something that's coming now. As you can see it coming. And once you look into the study of your karma and everything, we've all, in all of our incarnations, been around the block a million times. We should know what's on the block all by now. You should see it coming. And as you see it coming, you avoid the karmas, you see. So foresight. Now, about predicting the future, that's why most prophets, and I'll be talking about this tomorrow in more detail, is most prophets and psychics that predict futures are hardly ever right. If they get right once, it's like a career move, you know. The problem is you can never name a date or a day accurately. Some people have been more lucky than others in doing that for some other reasons. They've got different wiring or whatever. But most of us, you can't predict the future because it's this. What you have to look at if you want to predict the future is look at mass potential, not the individual, or not just one country or one individual. The light taught me to look at the mass potential, you've got a pretty good idea what's going to happen in the future. So if you look at the mass potential, and this is what's going to shock you tomorrow, most of you look at the mass potential the way the world is now and you think the future is going to be bad. Most people really do believe the world's 95% broken. Well, tomorrow, the hardest job I've ever had to do is show you that the world's 95% right. And there's a 95% chance this is all going to work out. That's the potential. I'll show you where that is. Good. So thank you, and come back again.